And that's my great pleasure, and welcome all. This is just a thrill for me, for us here at George Mason. I am Maury Piper, for those that don't know me, Dean of the School of Business at George Mason, but the relationship with GRLI, both for myself and for Mason, goes back years, and I started to understand what this group did when I was at IMD. And then I became the Dean at Cranfield in the UK and became much more active. In fact, I think was it Brussels, Sanders was my first group meeting. And what I love about the GRLI is that it combines this fabulous, can I say, peer support network, particularly in the last year and a half. I think it's important to look at it that way, with this wonderful mission of really changing the world through, in large part, management education, business education that we do. So we serve, of course, the leaders in the future, but we also serve our own kind of network and make sure that we hold one another up when we're down, and that we kind of help see different ways that we can move forward by connecting and sharing. So that is a great advantage here. We at Mason, and I have been, this is now my 5th year, are very much about making the biggest difference to the widest number. And that is something that not all schools and universities have the mission to do, or indeed the ability to do. I have been thrilled to see the way that our university, our School of Business, and now in particular, our Business for a Better World Center, which my 2 colleagues who have designed with John and friends this session, and we'll be talking to you shortly, have developed over the last few years with a couple of colleagues. And it is about how we make a difference in the wider world through the students, through the future leaders, through the broader networks with companies, with, of course, UN, UNGC, and you'll meet our special guest in a moment, who's been central to much of that work. And I just am so happy to be able to see all these different forces, all these different things happening in this one group. So you are friends, colleagues, but we also work to change the world together. And that's why we were so keen to host. I mean, we would have loved, and someday will love, to have you physically here in Virginia, but we also welcome the opportunity to get together like this, virtually face-to-face, instead of, as was all day yesterday for me, physically mask to mask. So there are trade-offs for everything, as you know. And as probably the only business dean who keeps a piano in his office, I'm really interested to see how we can further bridge the disciplines, the countries and cultures, and the generations, because that's really incumbent on us now to do in a big way. So I won't yammer on. I can do that all day. I look forward to further connecting with many of you, and I simply, and the students who we're going to be connecting with later on. And I simply want to say thank you for being here. Thanks to GRLI and the whole team for keeping the support network and the meetings and the progress moving, even in some of the most trying circumstances we've known. So welcome to Mason. Great to have you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Maury and colleagues, for hosting this. My name is John North. I've met most of you. It's wonderful to see some familiar faces, but also to have a number of people joining us for the first time, and we'll shortly have an opportunity to connect in smaller groups. I want to start with a very short and very informal land acknowledgement. This is not really done in these parts, but I thought it's particularly relevant in the context of the next 2 days gathering. I live in George, root of South Africa, and behind me, well, in front of me, in fact, although I can't see it right now because of the rain, is the Outeniqua Mountains, named after the Outeniqua Khoi, who lived here. It's a mountain range that runs parallel to the southern coast of South Africa. And the Khoi, or Khoisan as it's sometimes named, were the first inhabitants of Southern Africa and one of the earliest distinct groups of Homo sapiens. They are the unofficial first people of South Africa, and some would argue the first people of first people. The mountains here in the Garden Route and the Outeniqua, as I said, is named after this Khoi tribe. And the name means they who bear honey. Rock paintings by them can still be found in the mountains here. When I cycle or when we run in the mountain, we can see some of the rock paintings. So just wanted to acknowledge that because I think with the wonderful program that Maury and Anne Magro and Lisa Grinch-Pemble have put together for us, there's going to be a strong theme around honey. So I wanted to make that acknowledgement. Very briefly, the GRLI is an ongoing collaborative inquiry into global responsibility. It's held by a deeply engaged group of partners and associates around the globe. And this cohort is a unique opportunity for mutual learning, for creating impact at an individual and organizational and systemic level. It's a learning opportunity regardless of your role or your intention for being here. And so I would like to encourage all of us to grasp and cherish this as a learning experience. It started out and continues to operate as a very safe and trusting space where deans, directors, chief learning officers, directors work with peers on difficult issues, where they find inspiration, where they can refresh for the work ahead. It's become a platform for all the participating organizations to showcase and share their work on developing global responsibility. And it's also becoming an incubator for developing collective actions towards meaningful and systemic impact on business, education, and society. We're already witnessing the development of a shared module on global responsibility for sustainable transformation. So it works through the convening of these gatherings. It's stewarded by the participants, it's driven by the participants, and of course it's held by the GRLI, which is an independent foundation for public benefit that works in strategic partnership with the UN Global Compact, AACSB, EFMD, the two major accreditation bodies, and also more recently, glad to say, Oikos International, the student body that has recently joined our board. So the meeting or the gatherings that we're going to have today and tomorrow's call is conducted mainly on a Chatham House rules basis. So what's said in the small groups is confidential. We do record the plenary because sometimes it's nice to have a record of kind of our learning that we gather. But as I said, it's peer-based, participant-driven, and I'm very glad to be joined by the facilitating team, Claire Maxwell and Anders Aspling, who have been holding this since the beginning. Also want to acknowledge that one of our other board members, Julia Christensen, is on the call. She can be here for an hour. Of course, Julia helped kickstart the cohort. So Julia, our thanks also to you for joining us. We've continued gathering during COVID. There's been lots of positives, including that we've become more accessible, it's more flexible. And I think what's unique about this week's gathering is that we're combining a diversity of perspectives. We'll have a number of people joining us during the meetings. We are building on approaches that we've seen at our in-person gatherings. So for instance, at Vermont, we had some student conversations, and we're going to be doing the same today. And of course, when we met with Antwerp, Stephen and Wayne, we had some business leaders joining us. So we will have a similar kind of format in that we will have various stakeholder groups and voices being represented in the room. We will have a conversation in December about the future context and mode of the cohort. So as you work through the next 2 days, maybe you can make some notes also about what we'd like to see for the cohort going forward. So that's it. That's a short welcome from me as well. And on behalf of the GRLI, very excited to have this. I'm going to hand over now to Lisa and Anne, and I believe Kathy Calvin as well, which we're very happy to have here. And they will give us a short 10 to 12 minute conversational overview. And I suspect you can probably go on a little bit more than 12 minutes. So Lisa, Anne, and Kathy, over to you to set the context. Thanks.
I was going to say excellent because Anne and I are not known for being short on words. So a few extra minutes would be lovely. Well, first of all, it's just a pleasure to welcome you here. Anne and I are co-executive directors of our Business for a Better World Center. And so GRLI has a special place in our hearts because it was at the Guelph meeting where Anne and I sat down and hatched out the center. We drafted the center at at that meeting. And so it has been a labor of love for both of us, and it has continued to grow for both of us. So I just want to offer a hearty welcome to you. And then following on what John did, we also want to, if you were here, you would know that we are living and working on stolen land from indigenous people of the Americas. And we want to preserve the histories and stand in solidarity with the lineage of these individuals to reclaim their lands and foster as much reconciliation as humanly possible. So we honor the following tribes who inhabit this land in Virginia: the Pamunkey Indian Tribe, Chickahominy, Eastern Chickahominy, Upper Mattaponi, Rappahannock, Nansemond, and Monacan. So, Anne, do you want to offer some words before I introduce Kathy?
No, I just wanted to echo Lisa's statements. You know, it's a great pleasure to be part of this group. We've gotten so much out of this. And I also want to recognize, you know, we started on this project a while ago. We didn't officially launch the center until November of 19, but Maury has been just a tremendous partner and supporter of all of the work that we've done here. And without him and his leadership role in this, I don't think we would have been able to accomplish as much as we have. So I just wanted to make a point of thanking Maury for that support.
Amen to that. And so without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome one of our Center's advisory board members to share in this opening session. She is truly a remarkable person. And it is not an understatement to say that every time I read her biography and every time I talk to her, I literally get chills. She is a force to be reckoned with, and I have such admiration for her. After I tell you about her, I'm sure you'll agree that Kathy Calvin embodies everything that GRLI and our cohort stand for. Kathy is a UN Foundation board member whose career has spanned work in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. From 1976 through 1984, she served as Senator Gary Hart's press secretary for both his Senate office and 1984 presidential campaign, making her one of the first women to hold that title in American politics. She then served for 12 years as Director of Editorial Administration for U.S. News and World Report, and later as Senior Managing Director at Hill & Knowlton, a global public relations company. In 1997, Kathy then went on to serve as Senior Vice President and Chief Communications Officer of America Online, and later as President of the AOL Time Warner Foundation, where she guided AOL Time Warner's philanthropic activities and corporate responsibility initiatives. She joined the UN Foundation in 2003, first serving as Chief Operating Officer, then CEO, and then President and CEO starting in 2013. Kathy retired as President and CEO in December of 2019. And throughout her career, she's taken on active roles in a range of philanthropic activities, including serving on the B Team and the Elders Advisory Council, as well as the boards of the International Women's Media Foundation, City Year, Internews, the Newseum, Share Our Strength, the United Nations Association of the United States of America, and the East-West Center. She's a passionate advocate for multi-sector problem solving, U.S. leadership on global issues, and the inclusion of women at all levels in all sectors. And so welcome, Kathy. And I mean, it's just such a pleasure to have her here. And so what we asked, we were hoping that Kathy would do is take a few moments and comment on the role of the UN Foundation in crafting the Sustainable Development Goals, share where we're making progress and where we're lacking. So maybe start with that, if you wouldn't mind.
Great. Well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be with all of you. I was listening to John and Maury both talk about the importance of GRLI, and I didn't know about the history of it, but it is exactly what the UN envisioned when it created first the Millennium Development Goals in the year 2000, and then the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, which was shared responsibility for our common agenda. I mean, it's as simple as that and as inspiring as that. And then to hear you speak about the indigenous peoples, I live on Susquehannock land, and kind of understanding our commitment to both our past, but also our future, since all of you are in the education space, is exciting. And I think this is the time when all of us can learn from each other and also learn from those young people that we're trying to steward into the future. So I'm not going to talk as much about the UN Foundation other than to say where it stands in history. It was founded in the year 1998. so a little over 20 years ago, by mega thinker, challenger, passionate guy, Ted Turner, who was also the founder of CNN. And the same thing that drove him to found CNN, which was simply that he saw, as he looked around the world, he saw friends and neighbors and not enemies, and he wanted to connect people. He also saw that the UN was the body that could bring together global cooperation and take it to new levels, not only in preventing wars, but also in bringing prosperity to people around the world. And so he wanted to give $1 billion to support that. And you couldn't just give $1 billion or $1 to the UN at that time. So he created a foundation that would support the UN. And that's what we've been doing for the past 20 years. But that really means helping everyone else be a player in that big global system that's trying to move us all forward. So it's been a real pleasure to see what has happened in those 20 years. And you all have been a big part of it, either through what's going on in education, also the business sector, where organizations are seeing their roles as consequential to the progress that needs to be made around the world. So the Millennium Development Goals created in 2000 were really about ending poverty in the poorest places in the world. And we did pretty well. I mean, we actually did reduce poverty, get girls into school, reduce maternal and child mortality, bring people along. But by 2015, we recognized there were bigger issues that hadn't gotten addressed in that agenda, including our planet, including social inclusion and justice, and including ensuring that people could live together in peace and prosperity. And so new goals were adopted. There were 17 of them, which seemed crazy at the time. How could you ever remember 17, let alone speak them all? But actually they were a reflection of all the challenges that we face across the board. They're interrelated. They're truly universal because these goals need to be met in every single country, not just the poorest countries in the world, but all of our countries. You know, in America, 1 in 5 children goes to bed hungry at night. We have problems everywhere. There is abuse against women in every single one of the 193 countries in the United Nations. So we all have work to do. So they were adopted in 2015. But the most exciting thing that happened then was that on the first page of the declaration written at the UN was the inclusion of the university sector, the nonprofit sector, and the private sector as full-on partners with the member states of the UN in achieving the goals by 2030. And that was really remarkable because for the first time, there was a recognition this is not just something that world leaders who come and go were going to commit to and try to make the best of, but they were going to make themselves both accountable to and partners with all the other people who could make a difference. So I give a lot of credit to Ban Ki-moon, who was the Secretary General then, and to Antonio Guterres, who has followed and really actually challenged all of us not to just be partners with the UN, but just go out and get the job done. I mean, you don't have to wait around for the UN to take leadership. You don't have to wait around to be invited. You just have to get going and make a difference. So I first met Angel Cabrera from George Mason University, who was leading the university effort at that time and wanted to bring universities in. And I was so excited because I was working hard to get all the major and less and smaller companies of the world engaged as well. And so it was exciting to then learn about George Mason University's leadership. And maybe Lisa, I can stop at that and then you can take us where you want to go. But it's how I first got introduced to the great work that's being done at this university, but also now I'm learning from universities and learning centers around the world to help this next generation make some progress. And I would love to talk a little bit about what the UN is expecting from that next generation.
Well, I think actually that is a great way to continue because in some of our later sessions today, we have invited students to come talk about some of the projects that they've been doing with the center. And so I think the two questions that I would have for you are exactly that, where you were headed with the next generation. And then for organizations like GRLI, what can we do? Like practically speaking, action oriented, what can we do to move the needle and make the kind of impact that we hope to have? Because sitting around and talking about it is great, but what is it that we're going to do to make the impact that we want to make? So I think if you could touch on those two things, that would be fantastic.
Great. Well, so I'll take us back to 2015 for 1 second. So when the goals were adopted, and I have to say it was like a big moment at the UN, Malala and 193 young people representing every country in the world were in the balcony of the UN chamber holding us accountable, those on the floor. I wasn't one of the voters, but one of the, all the people there were being held accountable by that next generation. It was powerful. And a reminder, this is 2030, they're going to be the leaders. And in fact, I think the big thing I've learned in this process is they're already the leaders. So this is not about future leaders. This is about today. But at that time also, a lot of organizations stepped up to create new organizations to help organize and make a difference. So there was a business commission on sustainable development that did really groundbreaking studies on why this was in the business community's interest to get involved, that there would be $26 trillion in new growth by 2030, 365 million new jobs, things that matter across the world. So that was created and gave us some wind. LEAD was created, a World Benchmarking Alliance, so we could actually track our progress and evaluate it against others. And so it's been a good time to see a lot of collaboration across sectors and across industries where people are partnering together. So that's an important part of, I think, what will make us succeed. But 5 years in, so by the time we got to 2020, we had a major slide backward with COVID. We lost 20% of the gains in poverty reduction, health improvements that have been made over the past 15 years. And in 2021, the Secretary General convened a process to evaluate where we are and what it's going to take to get us to 2030, where we need to be, and created something called our common agenda. But he also created our future agenda, which was a call to action by young people who led their own process of evaluating what they need and demanding what they want for the future, which is a lot more voice in the process, a lot more opportunity to lead, and a lot more partnering with all the other organizations, and not as tokens or one-offs, but as genuine partners. And those are both great documents to read. They came up with a list of 10 things they want to see going forward. I'd be happy to share that with all of you, but I found it very inspiring that this was part of the process going forward. And so I think what we're seeing with young people is they're not waiting for an invitation. They are demanding change. They are asking to be part of the process in leading change. And they want to be full-on leaders now and in the future. And I think you all see that probably more than I do. I mean, this is a really interesting generation of leaders. What that means, I think, for an organization like GRLI is you've got to have an active listening and learning component to stay relevant to the goals you're seeking. You've got to be willing to try some different kinds of leadership and communication that maybe sometimes is a little uncomfortable. You've got to think about how to exercise inclusion of that younger generation in your ranks. And I think that's one of the hardest things I'm seeing everybody struggle with is how do you do it without making it just one or two tokens, but how do you actually involve and empower a new kind of leader to step in and be on an equal playing field with you. So I think nobody's kind of figured this out completely. The UN Foundation Board is going through its own struggles on this as well. And it's a bunch of elders, not youngers. But I think there's real possibility here. The second is I think we all learned a lot in 2020 about what we thought we were doing to make the world a better place, and realized our own built-in assumptions just had to be challenged at every step of the way. And so even the notion of leadership implies a power structure that I think may have to be rethought and to some degree undone. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think we just have to be willing to look at it. And I am so glad I'm not in a position of power anymore. I'm looking at the big challenges of undoing and unlearning that this period is going to require in order for us all to go forward. So I'm so happy to hear you all have a support network, because it's got to be pretty important at this time.
Sorry, still after 18 months, I'm learning where the mute button is. I think I still have a few more months to practice. That's just phenomenal, Kathy. And I think, I mean, for us at George Mason, to have somebody with your level of expertise and your background, with that true sort of tri-sector experience on our board is really, well, it's priceless, quite frankly. And I'm wondering if you can talk about what motivates you and others like you to be part of, George Mason University Business for a Better World, and what can we as educational institutions be doing to reach out and network and get people like you to partner with us?
So I've been on the board for about a year, and we've never met in person. I know some of the other players. What I've learned from the other participants is everybody's on it to learn. Everybody wants to give something back, but mostly everybody's on it to learn and to make some connections. I think there's a genuine desire to find like-minded people across all the sectors, and particularly in the business community, so that they can learn and then take back and have some support in trying to make the changes in their companies or in their organizations. Second, I think all of us are so interested in learning about what it takes to create future leaders, because clearly we're seeing a new generation of leadership coming into companies. And that's one reason I think we're seeing some remarkable changes in the way companies are treating their employees, the way they are evaluating the health and well-being of their employees as critical as the health and well-being of their balance sheets. Whole new approach to managing, because they know this generation is going to require it, but they also are starting to understand it's going to make a difference in the way that they provide services and products to their publics. And so they're learning from each other on how to do this, but they're also finding support. And then finally, I think listening to your students ask questions in some of the stakeholder roundtables we've been able to do, their questions are an interesting mix of skepticism, show me, and then show me again how to do something, but also show me that you're really committed. This isn't just a one-off and we're going to really stay with this long-term commitment, and show me that you're listening. And so I've been really interested in watching the students ask questions, because I think they are not coming at it from a fill me up and let me go out and do something, but they're really wrestling with the challenges ahead and wanting to figure something out. I'm going back to my alma mater in 2 weeks to do a program, and I know I'm supposed to be there to explain, but I'm really there to learn. And I think that's why you've been able to attract some great people to serve on this board, because they really want to be part of what you're doing. I also have to say, Maury, your description of we're serving the most with some of them the least. You have so many first-time college students and their families coming to this university. The diversity is so impressive, and it's so much part of our future. And again, just demonstrates the new way of thinking that I think all universities and learning centers have to be bringing to the table. So challenging times, but really exciting to see how this new generation is going to join us and then take us into the future. And I'll just close with just saying this, if you listen to the Secretary General talk about the importance of the work we're all doing together, and how it has to be something that's not led, but from the top, but is genuinely built across. I think this is an era when that's where everybody has something to bring to the table. And I'm delighted to have this opportunity to learn myself.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I think we could talk to you for hours and mine all of the things that you do, but I just want to say thank you so much for being with us this morning. I know that you have other items on your agenda, and I look forward to connecting with you next week at our board meeting.
I do.
So thank you so much. A real pleasure. And just to keep us, yeah, a little round of applause. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
And thank you for all what you're doing. Good luck.
Thank you. And so what I would like to do just now before turning it back over to John is to say that our theme for the next 2 days is really on social justice and sustaining impact. So you're going to see that theme. I think you heard it a lot with what Kathy was just talking about, the social justice and the sustaining impact. I think you're going to hear it in the discussions of the students that we have next. I think you're going to hear it in the discussions tomorrow when we talk about partnerships. But as you move about the day, keep that frame of what does it mean to do what we do with social justice and sustainability and sustaining impact in mind. That's where we're headed for today. So back to you, John.
Great, thank you, Lisa, and also again thanks to Kathy for joining us. Moving us forward, we have an opportunity now, and before we join by the student groups, just to reconnect with each other. And some of you are joining us for the first time as a learning partner to one of the deans, or perhaps you're returning after having missed a couple of minutes. So this is an opportunity to reconnect with each other, but also to start sharing our individual perspectives and our understanding on the relationship that we hold to social justice and sustaining impact, as Lisa just mentioned. So I'm going to paste into the chat just a suggested question for kind of opening the breakout rooms. We're going to go into groups of roughly 4 or 5, depending on the room size. So we'll be juggling it around, we will spend about 20 minutes in the small groups, just looking at where do I stand in relation to social justice and sustaining impact, and looking at the next 2 days, what do I hope to bring or offer, and what do I hope to gain or learn? So please draw on your context and your experiences. I'm going to open the rooms now, and then we'll reconvene here in about 20 minutes from now.
There you go. There's a nice picture of our students. Okay, now you're going. Okay, there we go. That's where we are. So we have representatives here today to talk to you about 3 different student initiatives that we've been doing over the last year and a half. A couple of them are summer programs. One is a program that runs throughout the year. We're really excited. We have a total of probably, I think my numbers wrong, probably about 60 students overall engaged across these 3 programs. But we have a couple of representatives from each. So first, we're going to talk about our liberal arts and business internship. Oh, you can go back for 1 second, Lisa. So our liberal arts and business internship with 2 students from a school other than Mason, who we've engaged in that project. A summer boot camp that we ran last summer called Tackling Wicked Problems, that's going to address a particular issue around social justice that they'll talk about a little bit more, and our Impact Fellows program. So with each of these, we've asked the students to introduce the program and then tell you a little bit about their own experience in it. And then, we often at the end of a panel have the opportunity to ask questions, and there may be a little time at the end for you to ask questions of the students. But we wanted to turn this on the head, and we asked the students instead to pose questions and challenges to you. So they are going to pose questions, the things that they're thinking about and worrying about, and those are going to be the prompts for us as we move into the next breakout session. So we're going to go ahead now and move into the first session here. The students are going to have about 8 minutes to talk about the program and their experience in it, and I'll kind of try to pay attention to time and keep things moving along. But first we have Carly and Lita. So welcome, and please take a moment to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for having us here. I can introduce myself first. My name's Carly. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior political science major and public policy minor at Carleton College. Lita, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Lita. I'm from Cambodia. I'm an international student at Carleton College. I'm a junior, double majoring in computer science and studio arts.
Yeah, so Lita and I were part of a small cohort of 8 Carleton students who worked with the Business for a Better World Center during the summer of 2020. That being the first COVID summer. So like a really, when the world was kind of like up in the air, everything was crazy, like a really wonderful experience to get to meet Anne and Lisa and have this opportunity to like engage in these projects together, even though it was online. And I think it really was a special opportunity, like both ways, because going to a liberal arts school, like we really have an emphasis on critical thinking. And so it was really interesting to bring like that skill set and that way of thinking into a business school. Like Carleton does not have a business program. So we got to learn a lot about what business education and what that looks like in practice. And then also like bring our way of thinking that we develop in a small liberal arts environment into this new setting. Yes. Yeah. So, and just in terms of like exploring principles of responsible business and business fundamentals, kind of going back to that point of feeling like I learned a lot during this process as well as like bringing in my own like lens for these issues. Having the opportunity to work on faculty research projects was really, really interesting. And kind of getting to see, like, I didn't know what the sustainable development goals were before I came to Business for a Better World Center. And having the opportunity to see how those play out in practice in the world, how many different people are like engaging in those goals through the faculty research projects that I was involved in was really special. And also engaging in a curriculum review of the accounting department and looking at how we could really like integrate those goals into the education itself. As Anne was mentioning earlier, talking about like building sustainable minded, equity minded next leaders. So really working that into the curriculum itself was one of the projects that I was also involved in, and a really wonderful experience to see how these things play out in practice, and also then how they're manifested in education and like what that means for going forward.
Yeah, awesome. And for me, I'd say on top of what Carly has mentioned, part of me felt like when COVID hit, mind you, I was the first summer, was so excited to apply to many different places, was nervous, and then boom, I couldn't. And so when I received this opportunity, I was really excited, especially because I've been passionate about education, technology, and just entrepreneurship and how business could do, well, good things and make the world a better place. And so to have this internship labeled and to have this place as business for a better world, I was like, well, okay, right up the alley. And so during my internship, we worked on several different projects, and I was really thankful to have like mentors, and not just one, but 3-4 mentors to work with. And these projects included, like for me, I never understood what stakeholder value creation was, and that was one of the projects we worked on that I was a part of. And in that, I really understood. I really get to understand what business reports were, how to actually read them and gain like ideas from them, and gain like an understanding of where businesses are at right now in terms of financial transparency, in terms of sustainability goals, in terms of all these different things that they said they would do. And so for me to be able to see that and process that, but also extract the data and use it, was very useful, because I wanted to be hands-on. And I was able to do that. The other things I was able to do was also related to the program itself, to the running of the program itself at George Mason. I was part of the marketing communications of the Business for a Better World. And in that, I was really excited because I get to apply and hone my digital skills in making websites, design, creating digital content. So that was really helpful. And also just getting involved in like spreading this, because it's such a great opportunity. And then the other thing that came along that I didn't expect to have had a chance to do was grant writing. Lisa brought that up, I remember. And I was really excited because as a student, you don't really get a lot of chances to prove to yourself and prove to other people that you can do different things. And like Carl said, like we don't have a business program at Carleton. Doesn't mean we can't do it. So it was very helpful to have that opportunity to showcase what we can do, but also to learn how we can proceed forward. And I learned a lot, but also the best thing was getting connected to people like Anne and Lisa and Rashad. I don't know if Rashad is here, but he was the in-house visiting person as well, who was supervising some of these projects. And I came out of it getting to know more about different lingos that I never heard before in business, BRT, Business Roundtable, and like how much the business landscape has been shifting to do more to get a sustainable future, which personally, as a young person, I've been worried my whole life about it. I mean, I see things and I'm worried about them. So to know that there is a place that we are working on it and that I could be a part of it was a great opportunity. Yeah.
So how do you feel like the work that you did with us or your experience, we brought in, speakers basically every week to talk about different elements of business and different elements around the SDGs, et cetera. How do you feel like the time that you spent working with us has shaped what you're doing going forward? Or how do you feel like you'll be able to use this in the future? Is it affecting your career plans? Is it affecting, your course choices? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. In terms of affecting course choices, I took a environmental ethics class immediately after my internship with Business for the Better World Center. And so it was interesting to go from like this like practical application, like kind of back to the theoretical, but like taking the things that I learned from the summer. I think also in many ways, my education has like trained me to be very cynical of like the business world in general. And I think it's like a healthy skepticism, but I think that this opportunity also, and speaking with like the various people who came in about like what they did and kind of like public consulting and like the business community has so many resources to really make a difference. And so I think it really like, it's definitely not a group that we want to like push to the side, but like they can be a driving force in like sustainable change. So yeah, just like, I think kind of flipping in my head, where resources for good are and how those can be used.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, Carly, because I was thinking about this. We got a question in the chat that said, so these students are not Mason students, and we responded, of course, but that was actually one of the reasons that we thought about doing this, right? Was the idea was taking a group of students who maybe would come in with a negative view of business, but engaging with us, engaging with the center, engaging with business students to think about how we can make business a force for good, right? How business already is in some cases a force for good and how it can be. So it's great that you came up with that. Same sort of.
It's working.
Yeah. What about you, Lita? We have about one more minute, so you can, if there's anything you want to add to that, and then if you guys can pose your questions that you want to pose to the group.
I think to have access to like Business for a Better World Center as an intern, but also to have access to you as mentors, I was confident I gained confidence and I applied for grant for projects that I'm gonna lead on my own. That's probably gonna become a startup. I just recently got another grant for this winter break, so I was working on that this summer. That's why I couldn't see you guys again, because I was working on my personal project. But it's a social entrepreneurship that is going to help Cambodian artists get better exposure in the United States, and hopefully get the United States to collaborate and engage more in how the developing world are doing. And yeah, so getting to know the works of everything through this internship has given me the opportunity and the skills with grant writing and marketing to be confident enough to do that. So yeah.
That's great. We always love the success stories. All right, so if you guys can pose your questions, and again, this isn't a prompt to start a conversation right now, but these are just the questions that Carly and Lita have for you that will then be integrated later into the breakout sessions.
Yes, I have mine written down, so I'm just going to read it real quick. How can businesses and business education work to integrate the Sustainable Development Goals more thoroughly into everyday life? Personally, I didn't even really have a concept of what the SDGs encompass before my experience here. So how do we not only expand the general understanding of these goals, but also ensure that they are like alive in practice and not just in theory?
Thanks, Scott. Lita?
Yeah, my question was more related to how businesses have been thought of as, like the business industry has always thought about how they could encourage students to look at business as less experiential and more impactful, like how we could make businesses deliver the impact stories in such a way that people understand like what kind of difference you are making. And I'm saying this because I remember reading reports while doing the internship, and I didn't realize how hard it was to gain an insight into these things, transparency in terms of financial transparency, as well as sustainable goals transparency and like the progress. They said they have done stuff, but it feels like, how can it be more easier to understand for the general people? And how can business schools help with that?
Great, thank you. Okay,
Thank you so much, you guys. It's wonderful to see you.
And Carly has to run to work. So thank you, Carly, for spending 15 minutes with us. And have a
Thank
great
you so
day. We
much.
appreciate you being
Bye-bye.
here. All right, thanks. All right, next we're going to move to two students representing our the summer project that we worked on last summer, which was we called our Wicked Problems Boot Camp. So we've got Freddie and Maddie here to talk about this. So if you guys, again, can introduce yourselves and then introduce the program and share some reflections.
Sure. Thank you, Anne and Lisa. My name is Maddie. I am originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's where I'm calling from. I am a senior at George Mason University. I'll be graduating in May with a double BA in Global Affairs and French. And my personal interests include conflict intersectionality and developing conflict resolution across borders in sub-Saharan Africa. And I'll let Freddie take it from here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lisa and Anne, for inviting us to speak with you all today. My name is Freddie Lopez. My pronouns are he, him, él. I was born in Guatemala, but moved to the United States when I was 12. I'll be graduating in May as well with a BA in sociology with minors in data analytics and legal studies. My personal interests include I'm an immigrant rights activist. I'm also an avid figure skating fan, and I like to go for runs, and have some fun. But yeah, I'll let Maddie take it away.
So the summer internship that we did was paid through the provost office at George Mason University, and it was done in collaboration with the Kaiser Permanente place-based initiative. There were 8 of us total from George Mason with academic background and experiences in business, global affairs, sociology, public health, conflict analysis and resolution, and legal studies like Freddie just mentioned. And we also had 3 graduate students with backgrounds in public health and folklore and storytelling.
So for our research, we were really looking at the social determinants of health in Bailey's-Colmore. That is a region in Northern Virginia that is very under-researched and very kind of like just secluded from a lot of the economic opportunities that Nova usually has. So we were looking at social determinants of health, such as health access and equity, economic opportunity, housing, social justice, and advocacy. And the skills that our research assistants or like the students participating in it were really focusing on were personal strengths and personality characteristics. So we did a lot of workshops and a lot of trainings looking into, who we were as a person before we went in and worked with the community. That included as well as self-empowerment and leadership workshops. We conducted oral ethnographies and had social entrepreneurship and impact gap analysis to kind of just really get a look at the population in the area that we were working with before actually starting our projects. But alongside that, I think personally, some of the skills that I learned, we engaged in community participatory research, and that gave me a whole new insight into kind of just how we're working, how you can work with communities within an academic kind of like context. So for example, in our group, we conducted a kind of a data analysis of the area into how nonprofits within Bailey's-Colmore were engaging within data analysis and data collection. So we were supposed to create a report about all the different kind of data that Bailey's-Colmore are like that was already produced in Bailey's-Colmore, but we found that there was barely any. So when we're trying to find all these data collections, we realized, okay, so there are a lot of obstacles that nonprofits actually go through when trying to collect data to improve the services. But there's no report or any findings on what these obstacles actually are and how like what solutions could actually be done about it. So then our group shifted our entire project to, once we talked to community members talking about this need of like these obstacles that they found, and there was like no actual research on it, So instead, we conducted a report on the actual difficulties that organizations are currently facing when collecting and analyzing data and how that affects their services that they give to the community. So it was very kind of like community focused, and that was a new experience that I hadn't gotten before.
Yeah, just to touch on what Freddie said, something else that this project really changed for me, before we even started the community work, we really dove into our personal strengths and how we can best fit on a team and then serve a community. So for myself, I learned that I work best if I can fully understand the historical context of a community. And so in my group project, what we did was we looked at the historical analysis of a community that had a significant immigrant and refugee population coming from Latin America, but also different areas in the world. We looked at census data and resources in the area to understand how they came to where they are today and how they relate to legal policies and economic inequities. Through that, we were able to produce a map where we were able to analyze the different organizations in the area and maybe some parts of the community where there were resources lacking and maybe areas where resources could be strengthened. And another one of my personal interests is on community gardens and how to use green spaces as a tool to build cultures and support different groups living in one same area. And a group partner and I, we interviewed stakeholders in the community to learn about what kind of resources they had, what did they need, and what we could provide to them as students at George Mason University with the knowledge and access that we have through being a university. At the end of our summer, we were able to present all of our findings to the community partners in a hybrid format. Since I'm in Louisiana, I did it virtually, but it did not change my experience at all. I had such a wonderful time learning from the community and from my peers and learning more about myself throughout the entire experience.
Yeah, and some of these projects are still continuing. So for example, one of our colleagues, Alejandra, she is developing a school curriculum projects to kind of increase graduation rates within the area, and also to increase the rates of students that go on to college and kind of increase awareness about educational opportunities for this community. So some of our colleagues are still continuing the projects, which they have found amazing and very insightful. And then, yeah, we'll take any questions from the audience or maybe we missed something.
No, I think that's, if you've had a chance to kind of share, kind of what the project meant to you, and Maddie just did. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Freddie. Otherwise, you guys can, move on to telling us what your challenges are to the group, your questions to the group.
I think for me, there was just so much to do and so much to learn from. So it really kind of gave me an opportunity to look at so many different issues, from economic disparity to health to immigration, which is something that I'm very passionate about. But then not only to look at those issues separately, but also how they connected to one another. So for example, my project, I look at immigration law because many of the community residents suffer from immigration, were affected by immigration policies. Some of them were undocumented, others were living in mixed status families. And immigration has been an issue that I have worked around since I was a freshman. But this gave me an opportunity to really look at how this issue interacted with other issues such as health, and kind of how these issues compounded on one another. So it was a very intersectional approach that gave me a better insight into, okay, like populations that are affected by, different identities, different kind of like problems. How do these issues accumulate, and how do we develop a solution that actually addresses those issues? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that directly ties to one of our questions that we had, which is in full. Businesses in both local and globalized contexts need to take into consideration the intersectionality of the different issues and identities that communities bring. How can business schools prepare future business leaders to address such intersectionality rather than producing a one-size-fits-all solution, and ensure that intersectionality is addressed in their own school initiatives?
And the second question that we had was, initiatives often frame marginalized communities as people to be saved rather than people who are under-resourced and underserved. How can businesses and business schools business schools community initiatives related to the sustainable development goals be driven by community members to ensure efficient and effective solutions.
That's terrific. Well, thank you, Maddie and Freddie. I know Freddie also has class at 10:30, so I don't know if he's going to be jumping off here quickly as well, or if he's able to stay with us for a little bit. So, you all know how it is, right? When you're working with students, everybody has a lot of commitments. So we appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thank you, Maddie and Freddie.
Yeah. So these first two programs that we talked about, you see that we had business students and non-business students working together, which we think is really, really important, right? As we think about doing interdisciplinary work, is that we have interdisciplinary teams. And so I think that's been a real strength of both of those programs. The third program we're going to talk about here is a program that is based in the business school and is focused on business students. So all of the students in this last program are students who are enrolled in the business school as business majors. So we're very excited here to have Nyla and Riley to talk about this last program, Impact Fellows.
Hi, you guys. I'm Riley Beneke. I am a current sophomore at George Mason. I am majoring in business, specifically a concentration in marketing. I'm from Williamsburg, Virginia, just about 2.5 hours from here, but I am originally from Minnesota, actually. I moved here about 6-7 years ago. So I'm really excited to share with you guys the things I've learned from the Impact Fellows, and I've been lucky enough to find my passion for lessening gender equalities.
Hi, I'm Nyla Asan, a sophomore majoring in business with a concentration in management and minoring in entrepreneurship. I'm from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and just moved here 3 months ago. I am passionate about traveling, and currently I'm trying to research and learn about the 26 countries I've been to and how they comply with the UN SDGs. Also, 2 years ago, I established a charity organization in Bangladesh that promotes menstrual hygiene and health.
So those are kind of just who we are, but we wanted to share with you guys just kind of what the Social Impact Fellow Program is all about. So it's a 2-year cohort-based fellowship. We're a community that all come from different diverse backgrounds who have all a very driven focus on social impact, specifically inclined to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And after learning specifically how to work with your cohort and all these goals, you learn the necessities needed for a successful team that builds each other up. And then the feeling of responsibility to help launch your cohort into advancement is one that is very prominent in this program.
So for our cohort, each semester, the Impact Fellows take a course together. For example, we learned about the role and operations of businesses and corporations in the first semester from the course Business as Society. And for the second semester, we focused more into globalization and its opportunities and threats by taking the course Global Environment of Business. The third semester is more like a very open-ended course where we identify and also learn to tackle wicked problems, which is designed through critical thinking and analysis. And the fourth semester, which I'm really looking forward to, will be more of applying our knowledge into practical platforms by apprenticing with the wicked problems.
So as fellows, we participate in a lot of co-curricular activities, including mission-focused organizations, guest speakers, and activities. So both Nyla and I will be talking about a few speakers that we have, encountered. And so I will be talking about Carrie Kennedy. She is the president of Robert F. Kennedy's Human Rights Foundation. So this foundation advocates for equal human rights and justice for all, working to spread peace all around the world. And not only that, she's also a speaker or author of Speak Truth to Power, Human Rights Defenders Who Are Changing Our Work. This book takes heroes like veterans and current soldiers and puts their stories about helping their communities and puts them into words. So specifically, this seminar was pretty much just her detailing a lot about child labor in developing countries and the horrible conditions that they have to go through. So this really ties in with our goals and how everyone needs equality in all the nations around the world and what we could do to make these goals possible.
And for me, this cohort, I had one of the most rewarding experiences of my life when we had Kathy Kelvin as our guest speaker for our seminar. Talking to the prestigious individual who served as the president and CEO of United Nations was like a really big turning point in my life, which helped me decide that I wanted to work in the nonprofit sector in the future. This seminar was my platform where I got to learn about the UN SDGs for the first time and like in details, and I deeply became passionate about this topic. Miss Kathy Calvin talked about her rewarding experience at the UN and how it felt dealing with worldly crisis and how we can make this world a better place collectively through small endeavors. Some of us shared our personal experiences and stories too, and we also asked her some questions. But to be honest, her responses were very motivating and it stood out from any other response that I could possibly ever find. The best part about the seminar was that I continued talking to Miss Kathy Calvin, and where she helped me, like where she shared a lot of helpful information and solutions to my inquiries all the time through email, and provided me with insights on how I can run my charity organization in Bangladesh more effectively and more efficiently. And I really hope we continue to attend such events in the future as well.
So, as fellows in the social impact program, we are assigned what I like to call a mentorship team. No, it's not technically called that, but I think we do get like 3 sets of people who kind of guide us. So as the first cohort that was composed, we were not able to get a fellow peer mentor. With this being said, in the spring semester, we are hoping to lead the up and coming cohort to success in the real business world. Another component of our mentorship team is being assigned a faculty member. This faculty member normally has some sort of relation to us as a fellow. So things such as majoring in the same degree or certain interests. So I had the opportunity of having to be able to work with the lovely Dr. Nikki Vlastera, who actually helped me acquire this current internship I have with the Business for a Better World Center. So as an intern of the center, I help with the social media components of the center that they need help with. And then I also help Professor Layla Austin in guiding the new cohort. So, and not only that, I also have Dr. Nikki Vlastera as a marketing teacher, and she's amazing. And I couldn't have asked for a better position and couldn't have done it without the help of these amazing women. And then the last part of our mentorship team is actually being able to work with a professional. I have not had this opportunity yet, but in your second year of your fellowship, you get assigned a professional mentor who has the same similarities you do as in relation to your degree.
So for this cohort, each summer of program includes an experiential learning opportunity that I'm really excited about. So for our first year, for our first summer, an impact residency was planned, but it got delayed to spring due to COVID. And there's also like a week-long residency to engage with communities and organizations in another region or country to experience how communities are addressing the global goals and also the sustainability goals. So for summer 2, there is an impact internship in a purpose-driven organization with opportunity for financial support in case the internship is unpaid or requires duplicate living expenses and other costs.
That's great. So if each of you could just take a minute, just kind of share kind of your reaction, your reflection on what the program has done for you, or how it has changed you, moved you. And then you can pose your questions to the group.
Yeah, so just like Anne was saying, just kind of our impact from the program. So I found some really great attributes about myself that I would have never known if I hadn't joined the social impact program. So first off, I realized that I want to work for a nonprofit in the future, specifically one to do with gender equality. I was able to decide this due to many projects with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And not only have I been able to learn about the goals that are needed to better society, but I've found many people that I can rely on. If you guys don't know Professor Austin, she is an amazing woman. She's shown me how to lead a team, and also Dr. Karen King. She is my Business 491 Tackling Wicked Problems professor. She's shown our class really how to work better with a team. So my professors have really helped me out find kind of who I am in the business world, but I've also made a lot of reliable friends through the way. So during COVID-19, I lived on campus and it was very lonely. But I was able to find some social interactions with my classmates through Zoom during our Impact Fellows class, specifically Business 100 and 200. So I would definitely say if another school wanted to do this program similar to this, I would definitely say to go for it. It helps students get an idea of what they need better to better the world and have hands-on aspects of business during their 4 years of college. So that's what I got for the program. But the kind of question I want to leave with you guys is, what do businesses need to do to achieve these goals in relation to the SDGs, and what knowledge, characteristics, or skills are needed in the leaders of those businesses? And how can business schools ensure that their graduates develop those needed characteristics and skills?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get anyone through. So from my experience, the Impact Fellows program was my first practical platform to think about and analyze the worldly problems that are going on globally. And I got introduced to the possible solutions through the UN SDGs and the courses that I'm taking. Growing up in a developing country, Bangladesh, I saw most of the issues that we talk about up close. So through this program, I redeemed hope that we can collectively make this world a better place in the future. This cohort is a really big part of me, and it shaped me into the person I am today. And the massive learning opportunity inspired me to choose my career pathway in the nonprofit sector. And this program educates me how I can efficiently run and expand my charity organization. And for that, I'm immensely grateful to professors and mentors like Professor Austin, Professor King, Professor Magro, and Professor Lisa, who bring out the best in me and provide me with many opportunities to personally and professionally develop me throughout the way. I made the closest friends in this cohort, and I would encourage other schools to start a program like this, because this can be the most gratifying experience of their lives in terms of experiential learning and opening doors to bigger opportunities. The question that I'd like to ask would be, many business schools teach students about how businesses can behave responsibly and support the SDGs. So what is our approach in being a responsible organization? What can the School of Business do to further the SDGs through our own schools' operations or policies and practices?
Right, thanks, Lila. Well, everyone, please join me in thanking our students. We're so proud of them. We think they really are the best ambassadors, the best spokespeople for the work that we're doing. So thank you all for joining us. We do have, I think we have maybe 3 minutes left. Is that right? So I don't know if there's time to take a question or two if somebody has questions, or if you just want to move into the breakout session. So I'll leave that up to you.
So what I want to suggest, and unless there are any immediate questions for clarification, we will now have an opportunity to go into smaller groups and to explore and unpack some of the questions that have been posed. So just checking around the room before I ask Lisa, maybe just to share the questions again on screen so that we can all just see them again.
I did
Lisa also just put them in the chat.
Oh, okay. Are they in the chat? Okay, great.
Yeah, I put them in the chat. I can't share and copy and paste at the same time for some reason. It wasn't letting me do that.
Okay, of course.
Is that okay? Do you want me to put the screen back up, or is it okay to have them in the chat?
I think before we set up the rooms, then I just want to make sure that I've got the coverage right in terms of room 1. If you could maybe just, Lisa, if you can maybe just call out which students I need to ensure are in which room, because that's what okay, so Maddie and Freddie.
So Maddie is here. Freddie had to go to class, so Maddie can be in room 1.
Okay.
And
Riley's in room 2.
Just give me a sec. Okay, Maddie, so you're going into room. Okay, room 2 is Riley. I've got Riley there. Wonderful.
Room 3 is Lita.
Lita had to
leave
leave.
though.
Right.
Okay.
And then Nyla's in room 4.
Okay, Nyla in room 4. Okay,
Oh, except, oh no, that's Amanda. Never mind. I thought Nyla was saying she had to head out. Okay.
Okay, so Nyla's still going into room 4 then?
Yes.
Okay, and then
And
what I'm going to do
if you do need to leave, that's okay. That's totally okay.
Okay, and then Anne and Lisa, can I maybe put one of you in room 4 then?
Sure.
And then one in room 5. Okay, wonderful, great. I'm going to open the rooms for 20 minutes. Everyone has seen the questions on the chat. So great, thanks. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. Travis, thanks so much for joining us. We've set aside some time now to hear some thoughts and ideas emerging from the small group discussions. It doesn't need to be a verbatim report back. Some groups may or may not have assigned someone to take some notes. It would be wonderful to hear an array of voices. If we may ask that we stick for each group to no more than 5 minutes, and I'm going to keep time just so that we can finish on time as well. Who's ready to share first?
I mean, I can go first.
Wonderful. Thanks, Riley.
Yeah, so I was in group 3. I had, the opportunity to meet some amazing people. So, we kind of were taught, so the question that we were kind of asking is, so what do businesses really need to achieve their goals in relation to these SDGs, and like what characteristics or skills are needed for these leaders of business? So, we were talking about how, it's hard to sometimes, find the financial stability to find, to put these goals into perspective. So, really finding that monetization, to put something into, to get it into the works, and, just getting the knowledge and everything like that from others' perspectives and everything. So, but as like schools and stuff, second part of the question is like, how can business schools ensure that their graduates develop, those skills and characteristics? One thing that Cindy said was that there's always going to be a priority of one student over another. So sometimes it's going to be hard to, get that opportunity that you may want. But luckily at George Mason, we have the great opportunity to find those types of internships, especially in like DC and everything. It's, we kind of have, I think that we have kind of a foot above everybody else, other organizations and everything, because we have those great opportunities of internships, volunteering, and everything like that. We're so centrally located that, we kind of have a step above everybody else. And so, and another thing that, Jeff, he was in my group as well. He was saying how if our schools like implement, like a base level of a business education that can trickle down into other classes and everything. Like I took the Business 100 course with Professor Layla Austin, and, you kind of learn the basics of what you need to succeed, in business school with, the SDGs in mind. You kind of learn how to put those into perspective. So it was great to hear kind of that, those skills are everywhere, like that every business needs to learn these fundamentals, whether it's just learning how to work with a team or learning how to be a leader of a team, it's going to be everywhere and at any corporation or that you work with. So thank you guys, everyone that was in my group. It was a pleasure to meet you all. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Riley. Anyone else from Riley's group that wanted to share? Jeff, Cindy, I think Van. I know, Cindy, you're having issues with your sound, so you may be reconnecting. Basu, anyone? Okay. Sorry, I'm not hearing anyone else, so maybe we can move on to the next group, the group that was with Maddie.
Yeah, so I was in group 4 and I got some wonderful responses, and it was so powerful, and I got to learn a lot in the, I think, 30 minutes of the breakout session, and like everybody contributed. And I am amazed to see how like all the business schools around the world, like also like Sweden and everything, I just got to know about it, is like doing so much about the SDGs. And it's just wonderful that we actually think about it. And I think the best part is that the inspiring words that I received from that group, it's just not the School of Businesses doing things for
the earth and sustainability. It's that the leaders and the mentors are pushing us and inspiring us every day and teaching us, like educating us to do better. And this was a very, very rewarding moment. And I got to learn so many things in such a short time. And I'm just very happy. I'm glad that I met everyone in this group today.
Anyone else thanks so much, Naila, anyone else from your group that wanted to share just in terms of their impressions?
I wanted to share something. I'm sorry, I can't find the silly mute button. But I just think Anders brought up a really great point in our group discussion, just calling attention to that it's a systems level change that needs to happen, and to be really thinking about what we're doing in terms of how do you change that system. And sometimes I forget that that's what we're doing, and I thought that was a really important point.
Thanks, Lisa.
And if I can come in just, Lisa, and one thing that we can do, which is fundamental, is empowering the now generation as much as we can.
Next group. So maybe, I'm just having a look here. So there was a group with Anne, with Kathy, Mark, Romina, Wayne. I don't know if anyone there would like to just share in terms of what was said there, what was heard.
I can jump in and start, and then anybody else who wants to jump in can add. We talked a bit about, kind of the programs that we had presented, and our question was really around how schools, in peer groups like this, right, how we can work across our schools to do things in common to really make that change. I thought Lita expressed in the question she posed to us, this idea of moving from the idea of experiential learning, which is really about sort of the type of process or the type of experience they're having, to this idea of impactful learning, which is really focused more on the outcome. And so we, Wayne shared a couple of really interesting programs that he has at his school. And we talked about this idea of, would there be power in scaling something, right? Finding something that we're doing at one of our schools and then thinking about replicating that across multiple schools, so that the students have that feeling of connection to their cohort that, you saw from our students presenting on their own programs and the connections they feel with their own cohorts, but then to be able to periodically have touch points. So, just using Impact Fellows as an example, if there were multiple schools around the world that had a program, an Impact Fellows program, and then we periodically could have touch points, right, where we came together, where they're either working on projects together or we're having periodic meetings, engagements, so that they had the sense that they were part of something bigger, right? That sort of psychic benefit of knowing that you're not alone in this. This isn't something that's happening here where I sit, but there's this, this worldwide move in this direction, and I'm part of that bigger movement. So those are some of the things that we talked about. And interesting to what you said, Lisa, about, or I guess Anders said about the, sort of systems change. Romina asked, a very good question about our experience at Mason and what we're planning for the future with our students, in terms of, especially to the extent that a lot of the students at Mason and within the Impact Fellows program come from groups that are traditionally marginalized. What are we thinking about in terms of, after the 2-year program, what happens next, right? And how are we planning to work with our students and to track and engage with them in the future as they go out into a world that is not changing as fast as we are hopefully changing, right? And where they may go out and face discrimination and in the workplace and finding a job. And so I thought that was a really good question and kind of tied back to that. We're engaged in trying to make systems change, but there's still a lot of work left to do, right? And so the world that they're facing within our programs and what they're going to face when they leave our programs can be very different. And what are we doing to prepare them, but also to stay with them?
Great job, Anne. That summed it up.
Great. One last group. I think we've got one more group.
I can talk briefly. I took notes as the people in my group were answering the questions that Freddie and I came up with. And I wish Freddie had been here. I think he would have loved the conversation that we had. I definitely learned so much from everybody. So thank you so much. But going off of what Anne was saying, one of the things that John Knights brought up was the use of empathy, especially in community work. Listening to students was another topic that was brought up, but learning as much from the community itself so as not to come in and then leave. Instead, using empathy and a design thinking methodology to create long-term growth rather than a short-term growth, and to really use business as a tool to create positive social change rather than just leaving. So, but as I told my group, I've never taken a business course before. I'm a global affairs student and studying French. So I learned so much today. Thank you all for having me here and for listening to my question.
Thank you, Maddie. Anyone else from that group that wanted to add anything?
Just something that Maddie said, which really, struck us, given that she didn't have the business background, and, there were insights that were being shared both from her background and her study of discipline, as well as those of us coming from a business discipline. We talked a lot about the importance of multiple disciplines coming together, that these are not single discipline issues that we face. And so we really tied that to the intersectionality. What was intersectionality? And we talk about it in terms of race and gender and a variety of other things, but disciplines have that too. And the valuing of what each unique discipline can bring, and going even from thinking about it as multiple disciplines or interdisciplinary to really transdisciplinary. That it's, it's certainly it's design thinking, and it's yes and thinking, and it's a way of what's the intersection among disciplines that really allow you to drive some of that change. And I think having students that didn't come from a business background sort of as the catalyst for some of these questions that we're wrestling with, I thought was really was important. And Maddie did a great job in terms of really capturing that, I think, what her group presented. So.
If I could just add one insight, and that is that I think what I heard not only from this group, from my group, but from other groups as well, is the importance of systems thinking and systems leadership. And just the thought that, we live in a hierarchical world, and that's not really compatible with systems thinking. So we have to do something about that. That's my own insight.
Very much agreed. Maybe just any reflections from what you've heard from the other groups, if there's any other responses before we move on. Okay, wonderful, and thanks so much again, Maddie, Riley, and all the students that are no longer with us, but everyone that has joined.
Nyla.
Oh, and Nyla, sorry, Nyla, didn't see you on the screen. Sorry. For joining us. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing and for helping facilitate this type of conversation, which we need so much more of. So I'm going to hand over to Lisa to give us a sneak preview of what's happening tomorrow, before Claire will help bring today's gathering to a pause. And please don't forget that once we've had our reflective pause, that there will be an opportunity for drinks for those of you who have to bring your honey-based snack and or drink. Okay. So Lisa, over to you.
Okay, so in true GRLI fashion, we started off today thinking a little bit about the I, moving into the we, and tomorrow we transition into the all of us. And from Mason's point of view, we are focused on the honeybees first and foremost, which is why we put that call out for the honey and why we've got some buzzy and bee puns kind of thrown in for the rest of the day and tomorrow. And then you heard the students talk about their experience with the Bailey's-Colmore initiative in Northern Virginia. Tomorrow, we're going to bring our partners into that to have a discussion. And then I think we are going to take some time to pause and reflect on how we can take what we've learned thus far and put that into a call to action, to kind of take what the students have challenged us to do, take what these partnerships have challenged us to do, take what you all have brought up today, and see how we can transform that vision into some lived action. With the theme of social justice and sustainability ever in the forefront.
And importantly, really thinking about this idea of student engagement, right? And engaging students as true partners in the work we do. I know sometimes I get confused between the meetings that we're having with the D&D cohort and the meetings that are the more general GRLI and which conversations we've had in each place, but there has been this recurring discussion around student voices and making sure that, making sure that we have students as part of our conversations and as true partners in the work that we're doing. And so, as we think about a plan for action, for me, that would be a really great thing to come out of this particular meeting over these 2 days, is if we tomorrow could come together to think about some way to do something moving forward as a Deans and Directors cohort that was focused on students and engaging students.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa and Anne. And of course, we will also ensure tomorrow, because I know that there may be some updates in terms of the actions that are already underway. I don't know, Jeff, Wayne, whether maybe tomorrow morning, afternoon, depending on your time zone, we might just want to give a brief update on that. And Wayne, that may also be a good opportunity just to do a little bit of for your upcoming book, which we're all looking forward to. So with that, I'm going to ask Claire to help bring today's proceedings at least to a pause, and then after that we'll have some drinks.
Well, I never like to stand between a person and their drinks, really. It's always a very, very dangerous place to stand. So I will keep this as relatively brief as I can, but both Lisa and Anne asked if it was possible for there to be something slightly different as well within the context of the Deans and this particular Deans and Directors cohort. And it is always my pleasure and privilege to be able to offer something to create a different energetic impulse. Just for a moment and just before we leave. So I'm going to invite you to work with me along the theme of bees. First of all, I would like to invite you to think about, well, this is historical for me, because there was a time when almost every British family kept bees. It was a country tradition that meant when anything happened within a family, a marriage, a birth, a death, or an absence on a long journey, the bees had to be told that this was happening. Otherwise, they might leave the hive, or they would leave the hive if they weren't told the news. And the practice of telling the bees may have its origins in Celtic mythology, because the Celtic mythology held that bees are our link between our world and the spirit world. So whilst this tradition started in Britain, the practice spread to many other parts of the world. Today, we'd like to offer a moment to gather our thoughts as we come to the end of one session of our Deans and Directors cohort, and before we enter into the other, almost in preparation for tomorrow. In so doing, we've incorporated the sound of bees into the reflection. Please note, no bees were harmed in the creation of this reflective moment, And you are very safe, that you will come to no harm as a result of these bees being heard. None can escape. The recommendation is to use their background hum to allow your mind to focus on what's important now. Whilst the encouragement is also always to give these things a go, to see where it takes you, you must feel free to do whatever is most comfortable. But all I ask, and all we ask, is that you just stay in the room with us. Don't leave us. Stay. And then we will bring today to a real and proper pause. Now, you may know that bees do a waggle dance. And so I'm going to invite you, because we have been sat for quite a while, and that's fine at one level, but at another, it kind of, it creates a certain sense of steadiness. And bees, as you know, are incredibly busy with their waggle dance, finding their places and moving. So you can either stand up and move if you wish, but I'm going to invite you just to move your limbs in some way, have a stretch. Just feel able to, just move in whatever way you want, stretch, whatever it is, just kind of, shift that body a little bit. Wiggle those toes if you sat down. Do you prefer it? Clasp the hands and whatever. Just give yourself a refreshing shake out. And when you're ready, just take a seat and find a comfortable seated position. So here we go on our bee journey. The invitation now is to close your eyes or lower your gaze. Just find a comfortable seated position. Lower your eyes or shut your eyes or lower your gaze. And making sure your feet are firmly on the ground, uncrossed, firmly on the ground, and your hands resting on your knees. Begin to be aware of your body. Feel the weight of your body, of your whole body resting in the chair. Sense your feet are firmly placed on the ground, and let your shoulders relax. Settle and be at ease. Now, become aware of your breathing. Take a few deep breaths, making sure that your out breath is longer than your in breath. Maybe counting 4 in or 5 and 6 out, whatever works for you. However you do it, just take a moment or two to focus on your breathing. As you continue with your deep breathing, imagine you are in a beautiful meadow. It's warm, it's sunny. The field is full of wildflowers. There is a lovely, warm, gentle breeze moving the long grasses of the meadow. You feel safe and content. And somewhere you can hear the buzzing of bees as they go about their business. They're busy, they won't bother you, but they are interested in your news and what you have to tell them. What do you have to tell them about what's important now to you? Is there something old in how things have been that needs to be left behind? Is there something new waiting to be born? Just take this time to think about that. Okay. Just notice what's arisen for you. What thoughts have come into your mind? What feelings have entered your body? And very gently begin to come back into the room. It's okay to leave the meadow. It'll be there if you need to go back into it again. Feel your body in the chair. Hear the sounds around you. And very, very gently return to us all in the room. Welcome back into the room. Now, if that's worked for you in any way, shape, or form, you may have found that something arose for you in terms of the questions about what's important now. Is there something old which needs to be let go of? Is there something new waiting to be born that the bees need to hear? And what we would like you to do is to hold those thoughts, hold on to them very tightly to your heart, write them down if you think you might lose them. But whatever happens, we want to create a pause between today and the wonderful things that have been offered to us from GMU, from Lisa and Anne, from the students. And we'd like to create an opportunity to come back tomorrow with those thoughts maybe circulating in your mind, to hear alternative and other views, and to really start to move into being busy as bees are, with action, with something that will make a contribution to their world as well as to our own. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Claire. And I think that brings today to a pause. And look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I am going to take 5 minutes and go and grab something to drink. And any of those who are sticking around, I look forward to sharing with you